dud last night. The guy who's attacked the unions, Scott Walker out of Wisconsin. John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation and Wisconsin resident, longtime journalist and friend. John, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Ed.
Was Scott Walker on the national stage last night a different Scott Walker that we've seen in Wisconsin and in other performances?
No, that was Scott Walker. And it was boring, and it wasn't very effective. And people need to understand that. I think you do, Ed, but not everybody else does. You have to watch the guy over time. He doesn't get to where he's at because of great debate performances or because of soaring epic speeches or anything like that. He gets there because he collects an immense amount of money and pours it in, as he's going to his PAC, I guess, or one of his independent groups, just announced they're putting $7 million into Iowa. That's what Scott Walker does. But there, in this critical test point, where he's up against not just one Democrat, but against all these other Republicans, he actually looked like what he is, which is, frankly, a little robotic.
He's kind of wallpaper.
Really just sort of present.
Yeah, kind of wallpaper. Doesn't stick out. And he was just kind of part of the backdrop of the whole thing, which I thought this was an opportunity for him to really break out.
Well, it was necessary for him to break out. This is the critical point. He has decent numbers in Iowa, but he's got trouble in New Hampshire, and frankly, Trump, as he has with everybody else, has eaten him up in other states. But do you know what I was struck by? And you tell me if I'm wrong about this, Ed. I think the hosts kind of got bored with him pretty quick, and they just didn't seem to come back to him very often.
No, they didn't. There wasn't much game there at all. It was programmed. It was like he had a data card put in the back of his head, and this is what I say when they ask me this. It was just there was no sense of connection with the American people. It was so programmed, and I thought, that's the Walker I know from what I've seen, and now seeing it on the national stage, I don't think he helped himself at all. Who was hurt and who wasn't? I don't think there was any big winner last night. There might have been some that took strides forward. The next debate, obviously, is going to tell us a heck of a lot more. But I think there were no big losers other than the American people, because it was all about policy last night, not about moving families forward. That's how I took it.
I agree with you on that. I mean, the questions were largely, people give the Fox folks credit, and I do too. I think they asked some tough questions, even embarrassing questions for some of these candidates, but they didn't go deep into fundamental issues, income inequality, what we're going to do with, this incredible wage gap. You didn't really get a sense of what they want to do about the economy.
You got nothing on race relations. You got nothing, and it's a big story in Ohio. Yeah. Okay? You got nothing on race relations. You got nothing on a jobs program. You got nothing. I mean, they act as if this disparity in wages and stagnant wages in this country is not a big deal. And until the Republicans recognize that this has to be addressed, I don't think they're going to have a leg up on anybody.
Yeah, this was not a debate that you watched this thing and you said, wow, these guys, whoever wins this is really ready to go for it. It was more of a debate of, people who are kind of shuffling for position. Now, when you ask about winners and losers, the winner, unquestionably, of the second debate was Carly Fiorina, because she did so well in the first debate. And now everybody is going to say, oh, she's got to be on whatever stage goes forward.
Yeah.
On the Fox poll, which is not perfect, but relatively good, 85% roughly of people who watched the first debate said she won. So she raised herself up to get into that tier. Now the question is, who's fallen out of that tier? I have to tell you, I think Ben Carson, he seemed in many ways like a lovely man, like a really kind and kind of gentle. You got to know what's going on.
But
he didn't look at. Yeah, no. It was weak. I also thought, I think Walker will fall down. I really think people are going to look at this and say, man, there's not much going on there.
Yeah.
Oddly, among people who advanced themselves, I think as an establishment candidate, Kasich did. There's no question that he wasn't exciting, but he handled himself smoothly. He sounded a lot like I think Republican establishment people think their candidate should sound, much more so than Bush. I thought Bush was shaky in a lot of settings. And then people who really helped, probably, I think it's fair to say that on the margins, Cruz and Rubio, they looked pretty capable up there. They looked like they could deliver the lines. And so I think they did okay. But I don't think you've got somebody where everybody's going to step back and say, wow, that's our person.
All right, let's talk Trump for just a moment, because he is leading in the polls. And I think he's going to slip a little bit, but, I still think that he is going to be the front runner when this is all over with. They tried to get him on immigration, and I think this was a good question, and I wish Trump had been more specific. This is on immigration, and Wallace asking for specifics.
Specific evidence that the Mexican government is sending criminals across the border.
People that I deal with, that I talk to, they say this is what's happening because our leaders are stupid. Our politicians are stupid. And the Mexican government is much smarter, much sharper, much more cunning, and they send the bad ones over because they don't want to pay for them. They don't want to take care of them. Why should they when the stupid leaders of the United States will do it for them? And that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
That's a lack of substance. Using the word stupid 3 times, I think people want a little bit more than that. But I do agree that people are going to gravitate to his passion on that we're not doing enough, and the Mexican government is being vilified. And I think conservatives are going to buy that, John. I do.
Well, here's the deal. You and I watched the debate, right? And a chunk of hardcore conservatives did too. But most people don't. Most people didn't. They're going to see the sound bites. They're going to see the clips. People are going to see that clip, and you and I are going to know that Trump is bogus there, that Trump is saying things that are completely ungrounded.
Yeah, his specifics were people he talked to. Okay.
Right. But how that plays, if you keep playing that on conservative talk radio, you play that a few times on television, even on the news, the people who want to hear that, that's going to sound pretty good to them. With Trump, the most important question was, to his credit, the opening question from Brett Baer. Are you going to stick with this field? Because that's a fundamental question. That's the political question.
It is, but the largest voting bloc in this country is independent voters.
I'm not going to say it hurt Trump. What I'm going to say is that was the fundamental question. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that's going to have Republicans pulling their hair out. Reince Priebus just had to, I can tell you, I'm sure Reince Priebus did not vet that question. And so here's the important thing. How Trump pivots out of this, how he uses this, is incredibly vital. But there is the possibility that he can go up on this to say, look, I care more about the stuff I'm talking about than I do about petty partisanship. And say this even to the Republican base. Look, you've been disappointed again and again and again, just as Richard Viguerie was saying a few minutes ago. They've let you down again and again and again. And that's because blind party loyalty means that folks end up backing candidates that we know are going to let you down. I won't let you down, and I won't tell you I'm going to back one of these losers. Yeah. If he pivots it that way, I'm not sure that he goes down. I think he could go up.
And I also think he could play a trust card. He could play a trust card from the standpoint that I told you that I might run as an independent if I'm not treated with respect and if I'm not part of the process. And I was the first guy to get the question up there, and I stuck to my guns, and I had the guts to do it. You can trust what I tell you. I mean, I think that's there's a positive that can play off all of that. So Walker's a disappointment. Cruz and Huckabee may have forwarded themselves a little bit. Kasich seemed to be the most workable Republican up there, as I would term it, and I think that Rand Paul taps into the privacy issues. That's been one of his strengths, and I still think that Christie looks like a bully. That's how I call it.
I think you call it pretty well there. I will say one other thing that kind of hovers maybe above all of this. That response to Megyn Kelly on Rosie O'Donnell, the whole tenor of that response, Trump was bad there. I mean, that was him at his meanest, not rising to anything nearly presidential. But it's not about Trump. Did you notice that no one else on that panel stepped up and said, I really don't think that's how you should talk about women.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the Republican Party has got issues with women. There's no question about that.
I think that's the Republican problem.
Yeah. John Nichols, great to have you with us. Always, I appreciate your time. We'll do it again. John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation magazine. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.